Hey y'all, it's me again, Wesley, and this is another planning period with Teach This Teacher. I am super excited to get started with you today. Today we are going to be looking at SS8H10, all about Georgia in the post-World War I era. Post-World War I. So our element A starts off talking about how technology has now transformed our state and created a population shift. Students should come to this standard already from SS8H9, understanding that the Great Depression and the drought has caused tenant farmers and sharecroppers, mostly African Americans, but also a lot of white Georgians. It has caused them to move to either northern states, or it has caused them to move to cities in the state of Georgia. So a huge population shift has happened. Now you're going to build on that knowledge of what causes population shift by adding new technology like agriculture. This harkens back to one of your enduring understanding, how innovation in technology changes history, changes a society. So you're going to just remind students that technology changes our society, and you can start this lesson off by asking them, how has society changed with common technological innovations or more recent technological innovations? Or you can ask them, as I said, for examples throughout history. How did the car change societies? Well, people could live further out from the industrial centers, so that's how we got suburbs. And you can give them other examples of how technological innovations have changed the course of history. Now they need to understand that the population of Georgia is shifting to bigger cities because tenant farmers and sharecroppers are not needed in the numbers that they were before, because now large tractors, other machinery, reapers, harvesters, planters that are motorized, this technology is now taking the jobs of low-wage workers. You could also bring in current events with artificial intelligence and how it is projected to take jobs of some workers, such as, will we one day, and you can find a video on this, have fast food restaurants that has 0 workers, that you make your order electronically, which you already can do at most McDonald's. A machine will make your order to your specifications, and you pay a machine and it shoots it out of a like a vending machine to you, right? So you can make that connection and just have them understand that the population of Georgia is shifting during this time. And the teacher note says, though the rural population in Georgia has decreased from almost 85% in 1900 to less than 25% today, so 75% of Georgians today do not live in a rural setting in Georgia. Although that's true, farming is still the most important industry in Georgia, bringing in over $56 billion to the state. This is going to be a bridge into another standard when we look at the economy standards about the biggest industries in Georgia. So you want to go ahead and say that now, because it fits in with the standard, and it'll give them some background knowledge once you get to the economic standards. And okay, with that, we are going to move right into element B. It says, explain how the development of Atlanta under mayors William B. Hartsfield and Ivan Allen Jr. impacted the state. So perhaps students are familiar with Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport, and you're going to pull on that background knowledge when you start this part of the standard element B, and ask them, where have they heard the name Hartsfield before? This maybe was covered when you did your geographical regions and you talked about how the Piedmont region is the economic powerhouse of Georgia, and one of the reasons is because the Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport. So that term should not be totally foreign to students. So some biographical information on William Hartsfield. And remember, this is a pretty low DOK. It says explain how these two mayors helped Atlanta develop and how did that impact the state. So it's just an explanation. You're not evaluating their effectiveness. You're not analyzing, just explaining. So their biographical information, which probably isn't very important because it doesn't get to the standard. It doesn't tell how they developed Atlanta or how they impacted the state. Nevertheless, it's in the teacher's notes, so I'm going to briefly talk about it as well. William Hartsfield was born in Atlanta, and he never finished high school. I would want to say that that's one of the things you want to highlight to students so that they can respect his accomplishments, but at the same time, we don't want to discourage them from finishing high school. So I'll leave that up to your professional judgment. But the part that you should definitely cover in his biographical information is, even though he didn't finish high school, he spent his nights studying for the bar exam, and he became an attorney basically from his own studies, which is extremely impressive. In 1922, he began his political career when he was elected to the Atlanta City Council. If you have not covered your government standards yet, you might want to briefly explain that a city council is like a board of several individuals from different parts of the state that make decisions, kind of like a very small legislature, but for a city and not for a state. He was very supportive of aviation and have students understand that this was a budding, very new idea at the time, airplanes, but he was a big supporter of it. In 1937, Hartsfield became mayor of Atlanta, so he wasn't just on the city council, but he moved up to being mayor. And he did some very forward-thinking things, like promoting integration in the state. He tripled the size of Atlanta by annexing several square miles into the city limits, and he oversaw the construction of a lot of public parks and the expressway system. He remained in the office of mayor for 20 years. One of the quotes that is really popular for William Hartsfield is he said that Atlanta was, quote unquote, the city too busy to hate. So this was his response to the racial segregation, strife, and violence that was going on in other cities in the South. He said Atlanta's too busy to hate. So that was a branding, part of his branding of the city, to help kind of integration and that kind of thing. So it was after his death in 1971 that the Atlanta International Airport became the Hartsfield International. Part of the reason that he is credited so much with Hartsfield International Airport is because it was his idea to buy a racing field, a large racing field, and convert it into a place where planes could land. Now, you could imagine when people would be pretty skeptical of this, when airplanes are this brand new idea that supposedly flies people through the air safely. Many people didn't think this would probably be a great way to spend the city's money, thinking it would be a waste, a bust. But his forward thinking in that field now is where our busiest airport in the world sits, in Atlanta. Ivan Allen Jr. succeeded William Hartsfield in what year did he succeed? He came after him. And I don't have the exact date, but he went even further in his methods to integrate the city by desegregating the city hall. There was no longer black and white water fountain in the city hall, black and white cafeteria. He integrated it. And he worked with Martin Luther King Jr. to secure the city's smooth transition into desegregation per the teacher's notes. So that's very important for students to understand that these were both proponents of civil rights. He was also instrumental in building Interstate 285. Your students that are very familiar with Atlanta will know where 285 is. And this ties into one of your standards about the four biggest transportation systems: railway, interstate, seaports, and airports. So hopefully they've looked at some maps and seen all the interstates in Atlanta and around Atlanta. He also was an advocate of MARTA, which stands for Metropolitan Atlanta Rapid Transit Authority. Students, again, that are not familiar with Atlanta might need to get a little background on the commuter rail line, the buses, and that kind of thing. He helped establish that authority for the city to have mass transit. But one of the most important things that you definitely want students to know about Ivan Allen Jr., his biggest, I would argue, his biggest contribution was his advocacy to bring major league sports to the city. Why was this a big deal? The word is billions. The Atlanta Hawks, the Atlanta Falcons, and the Braves, and now Atlanta United, the soccer team, brings billions of dollars to the city and to the state. Of course, Ivan Allen Jr. did not bring Atlanta United, but he was instrumental in bringing the other three that I named. He, in 19... excuse me. I don't have all my dates here. My dates are messing me up. In 1966, he brokered a deal to bring the Braves to Atlanta. And he persuaded the NFL to bring a team to Atlanta, which is now called the Falcons. And in 1968, the Hawks basketball followed. Through time, other major league sports have come and left, like hockey and women's soccer, basketball. But these major league sports are very instrumental in the economy of Atlanta. And they are the reason their stadiums, their facilities put Georgia on the map and put us in contention to win the 1996 bid to host the Olympics. So Ivan Allen Jr., it could be argued, is the reason that Atlanta hosted the 1996 Olympics and became an international destination, which it probably already was, but even more so because of his work with the major league sports. And that, my friends, pretty much wraps up element B. So SS8H10 is another 3-element standard. So we're going to look at the last element, element C. This element is can be quite confusing, especially to explain to students. So I'm going to do the best that I can. It says, describe the relationship between the end of the white primary and the 1946 governor's race. So what you do not want to do, and what you do not want students to do, is just to explain what a white primary was and what the 1946 governor's race was. You want them to be able to explain the relationship. I think that's our key word. They have to say how they go together. But to do that, they have to understand what both of them are individually. So I'm going to start with what is the white primary. This is confusing in the Georgia teacher's notes to me because even though the standard says the end of the white primary and the 1946 governor's race, the teacher notes then go into the 1946 governor's race first. But in my opinion, students need to understand what a white primary is first, which is the way the standard is written. So the white primary was a system into where black people were technically allowed to vote, but in actuality not able to vote. So let me make that make sense. You can give someone the right to vote in a federal election because it's mandated by the amendments, the 14th Amendment. So you can say, black people in Georgia have the right to vote in our elections. But in Georgia, because the Democratic Party had a huge majority, the primary was basically the election. Whoever won the primary would certainly win the general election. And because the party is not a federal agency, the Democratic Party, they set up their own rules on who could vote and who could not vote. Therefore, the federal government, they argued, and it worked for quite a while, did not have a say in who they allowed to vote. So they said, in so many words, only white people can vote in our primaries. So although African Americans could vote in the general election for governor or whatever in Georgia, they weren't actually having a say in who would win because the winner was actually determined in the primary system. Hope that makes sense. So that's what a white primary refers to. Now, how did the 1946 governor's race bring about the end of the white primary system? Well, here's what happened. In 1946, 3 people claimed to be the governor of Georgia at the end of the election. The person who actually won, Eugene Talmadge, died before he took office. He was he was elected for a 4th term, but he died before taking office. Many of his supporters believed that they knew that he might die because of his poor health, so they wrote in his son, Herman Talmadge, because they believed by law that the second place winner could be appointed by the General Assembly of Georgia. However, the new Georgia Constitution at the time actually said the lieutenant governor would take the governorship. So, would the governor be Herman Talmadge or Melvin Thompson, who was voted as the lieutenant governor? This gets really confusing because you might say, why would Melvin Thompson be lieutenant governor who is anti-Talmadge when Eugene Talmadge won? Well, back then at this time, you voted for lieutenant governor and governor on 2 separate tickets. They didn't run together. As a matter of fact, that's how it still is in Georgia. So they had an anti-Talmadge, the way Talmadge was doing things. We've already studied about Talmadge in Standard 9. He is now taking over, although more people voted for Talmadge. So you can understand how this would make the Talmadge supporters really angry. So now you have Eugene Talmadge dead, Herman Talmadge voted on by the General Assembly, and Melvin Thompson, who's the lieutenant governor, who's claiming the governorship. Well, now a third person comes in and says, actually, I'll just be governor. And that's Ellis Arnold, who was the sitting governor. All right, so let's get this straight. Ellis Arnold was governor. He is an outgoing governor. Eugene Talmadge wins first place to replace him, but dies. So Ellis Arnold says, I'll just remain here because you guys are not going to put Herman Talmadge in, because remember, he's anti-Talmadge, and you won't let the lieutenant governor be governor, Melvin Thompson, so I'll just stay here. In the end, this was a huge, embarrassing fiasco. 3 people claiming the governorship. It puts a spotlight on the white primary system, and all of this ties together to basically bring about an end to the white primary system. Let's solve the problem. You're probably hanging on a ledge trying to figure out a cliffhanger who end up getting the governor's mansion. Arnold, the outgoing governor, was arrested by state troopers and put out of the governor's office, and he set up his own governor's office somewhere else in the capital. He finally gave up claim to the governorship, and the Georgia Supreme Court ruled that Lieutenant Governor Thompson, who was anti-Talmadge, actually was the rightful governor according to the new state constitution. And a special election was held in 1948, and Herman Talmadge closely defeated Thompson. So Thompson was only there for 2 years, and the special election put in Herman Talmadge. So what is the relationship between this controversy of the 1946 and the end of the white primary system? African Americans and blacks, led by two activists called Dr. Thomas Brewer and Primus, or E. King, who was a barber and a minister, attempted to vote in Columbus, Georgia, and they were told that they couldn't. They sued. The case, King versus Chapman, went to the federal district court, and they ruled in favor of the African American King, and said that the white primary was unconstitutional. Governor Ellis Arnold did not fight the ruling, and the white primary ended in Georgia. A side note, Eugene Talmadge, who, remember, beat Thompson in that special election, ran on a platform to reinstate the white primary system and was elected for a 4th term. My friends, that was a lot. It was a whole lot. But I hope you learned something, and I hope you understand the standard so where you're ready to teach it to your students. And if you need some resources to help you teach it, I have them all down in the links. Hope you check out those resources, and I really hope you like and subscribe to help other educators find this resource and help my own teacherpreneur business. And I hope you have a wonderful school year, and I will see you in the next planning period. Bye, everyone.